Ships are docking at the busy harbor under a crystal-clear sky as we get our first look at this massive port town. This bustling trade hub is exactly where our story begins, with commerce and adventure in the air. Looking out over the rooftops, the morning light reveals a quiet but bustling town that is just starting to wake up for the day's business. These fresh conches clink together as she carries them through the streets, hoping to find a buyer who will give her a fair price. Someone is carrying a heavy wooden bucket full of fresh conches. You can almost hear them clinking against the wood as they are hauled through the stone streets toward the market square. A friendly merchant in a green apron spots our girl passing by and calls out for her to take a look at his shop. He seems eager to show off his fresh catch and hopes she will be his next big customer for the day. He eyes her from across the counter, clearly thinking he has found an easy target to exploit for some cheap inventory. She keeps her expression neutral and friendly, hiding the fact that she knows exactly what her goods are worth on the open market. Our girl gives him a sweet and very polite smile. She looks like the perfect target for a quick scam, but those bright blue eyes are much sharper than they appear at first glance. The market is full of potential customers, including a young boy who is begging his mother to buy some of the fresh seafood on display. This greedy merchant watches her every move, already calculating how little he can pay while still making it look like a fair deal. He assumes she is just a clueless rookie who has no idea about the current scarcity of fresh conches in the harbor area. After weighing the bucket, he looks her right in the eye and offers a measly 10 coppers per kilo, acting like it is a generous price. Internally, he is celebrating his luck because he knows these shells are rare, and he is about to make a massive profit on her hard work. Before he can grab the goods, she suddenly speaks up and puts a stop to the transaction with a sharp warning. He is completely caught off guard by her sudden change in tone, realizing that this girl might not be as innocent as she looks. She calls him out on his blatant lies and asks if he really thinks he can get away with offering 10 times less than the market rate. Desperate to keep the stock, he quickly jumps the price up to 40 coppers while claiming he is pushing his budget to the limit. She does not even flinch at the increase and demands 70 coppers instead, showing that she is the one in control of this deal. He tries to argue that such a high price is reserved for bulk orders, hoping to talk her back down to a number that favors his wallet. She remains completely unmoved by his excuses and decides it is time to show him what a real professional can do in this market. With total confidence, she asks him what he will do if she manages to sell every single shell on her own right in front of him. He scoffs at her proposal, thinking there is no way a random girl without a reputation can move product in a place this competitive. The merchant lets out a condescending laugh. He thinks she has no clue how hard it is to sell product in this competitive market without an established reputation. Since he thinks they will be seeing each other often, he suggests a compromise that still involves her taking a loss. She decides to end the conversation and tells him to watch closely because she is about to sell her entire catch in record time. As a final condition, she makes him promise that he will always trade at the fair market price if she proves him wrong today. She sets a final condition for their future business. If she manages to sell every single conch on her own, he has to agree to her terms going forward. The merchant watches her walk away with a skeptical sigh, as he thinks this newcomer has absolutely lost her mind. He is convinced there is no way she can move that much inventory on her own and expects her to fail miserably. With her heavy bucket in hand, she walks straight into the busiest part of the town square to begin her unconventional sales pitch. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, she prepares to command the attention of every single person within earshot. She lets out a massive shout that echoes through the market stalls, instantly turning every head in the direction of her small bucket. With a bright and inviting expression, she presents a prime example of her wares to ensure the crowd sees the high quality for themselves. To create a sense of urgency, she tells the gathering crowd that each person is limited to only 2 kilos of these fresh conches. The shoppers start whispering to one another, worried they will miss out on the best deal of the day if they do not act fast. Her bold marketing tactics create a surge of interest, as the rumors of a great deal begin to spread rapidly through the marketplace. The hype is real, and the crowd starts moving in fast. Our girl just turned the whole market upside down in a matter of seconds, and the merchant is left watching her work. In a matter of minutes, Her bucket is completely empty as the residents scrambled to buy every single shell she had to offer. She is absolutely delighted with the outcome, having proven that she has the skills to survive and thrive in this tough business environment. Clutching her full bag of earnings, she feels a sense of triumph now that she has more than enough money to continue her journey. She reminds the stunned merchant to keep his side of the bargain, ensuring her future trades will always be at the price she deserves. The poor merchant can barely process what just happened as he breaks into a cold sweat. He has no idea how this young girl managed to completely outmaneuver him in his own shop. This merchant is completely shell-shocked by the exchange. He has no clue how this young girl just outmaneuvered him. He can barely process what just went down in his own shop. Haley walks through the town with a light heart after finishing her successful negotiation. She is finally starting to feel like she can actually survive in this strange new world. It has been only 2 days since she woke up inside the romance novel called This Princess Pulls, a Marriage Scam. She is still trying to wrap her head around her bizarre new reality. The soft sunlight and vibrant flowers make this new world look like a beautiful dream. However, our girl knows that this peaceful scenery is just a mask for the struggles ahead. 2 days ago, everything changed when she first opened her eyes in a dusty, abandoned cabin. She woke up completely alone and surrounded by rotting wood and heavy cobwebs. She tore the cabin apart looking for any scrap of information about who she was supposed to be. Unfortunately, the empty room offered no real clues about her new identity or history. Eventually, she stumbled upon a discarded newspaper that would change everything. She clutched the paper like a lifeline, hoping it would finally provide some answers about this world. After reading through the articles, the terrifying truth finally hit her. She realized she had been reincarnated as a minor character in a novel she once read back in her old life. The name Bloden Ilfane sparks a memory deep in her mind and sends a shiver down her spine. She is actually living inside a story world she already knows inside and out. The name Bloden Ilfane sparks a memory deep in her mind and sends a shiver down her spine as the truth finally hits her. She has actually been reincarnated as a character in a story world she already knows everything about. This was the very novel where the original female lead named Veloa was supposed to take center stage. Everything is starting to click together as she recalls the original plot. This was the very novel where the possessed female lead named Veloa was supposed to take center stage. Everything was starting to click together in Haley's mind. The story followed Veloa as she worked to break the ancient curse placed upon the male lead. It was a classic romance fantasy that she had enjoyed in her previous life. According to the story, Veloa is the hero who breaks the terrible curse haunting Bloden Ilfane. Their romance was the heart of the entire book from start to finish. But things look a lot messier in person than they did on the page. The weight of that destiny involves a lot of blood and sacrifice that the readers back home never had to experience. A local merchant woman spots her and waves excitedly from across the way. She shouts that it has been a long time, acting like they are old friends from the past. She realizes that she needs to be extremely careful with her words because the identity she has taken over is a complete mystery to her. One wrong move could blow her cover and ruin the peaceful life she is trying to build. Haley realizes that she needs to be extremely careful with her words. The identity she has taken over might be a lot more complicated than she initially thought. The woman mentions that something happened because of an identity guarantee issue. Haley freezes as she listens to the news that could potentially ruin her life here. It turns out her new body belongs to an undocumented resident. She has no papers, no status, and absolutely no identity guarantee in this entire empire. Talk about a nightmare. The shocking revelation about her legal status leaves her breathless. She can barely believe that she escaped one difficult life only to end up in another precarious situation. Her mind drifts back to the miserable life she led on Earth before arriving here. She spent her days working like a mindless machine at a food factory just to stay afloat. Even after her long shifts at the factory, she had to hunt for seafood on the cold mudflats. She worked herself to the bone every single day without any rest. But then, the cycle of endless labor finally reached its breaking point. Her body could no longer handle the extreme pressure and exhaustion she faced every single day. But then, tragedy struck. The cycle of endless labor finally reached its breaking point for her body, and she could not take it anymore. She remembers the feeling of falling. The exhaustion finally won, and her vision faded into a dark, bloody red as the world slipped away from her grasp. Now she is in a new world, but the situation feels hauntingly familiar. Once again, she finds herself standing there with absolutely nothing to her name but her own will. The realization that her status hasn't improved at all is devastating. It seems that even in this new world, she is destined to struggle with the weight of being a penniless debtor. The realization hits her like a ton of bricks. Has she really been reduced to being a penniless debtor for the second time in 2 different lives? The universe is being savage. Haley tries to keep her spirits up while finishing her daily errands for the townspeople. This second life is definitely not the easy walk in the park she expected when she arrived. Our girl tries to shift her mindset to something more positive. She knows there has to be a silver lining somewhere in this mess if she just looks hard enough. She looks down at her simple, clean clothes and tries to find a reason to be grateful. Even if she is poor, this life is a fresh start far away from the factory. She feels like the heavy chains of her previous life's debts have finally been shattered. This is her chance to live for herself and finally earn money that she can actually keep. A small spark of hope lights up her eyes as she makes a firm decision. She tells herself that today is going to be the start of her new plan for survival. She remembers the small cabin she found by the shore. It may be old and run down, but it is a roof over her head and a place she can finally call her own home. She starts planning her future sanctuary where she can grow her own food. She wants a little garden tucked behind the house that is perfectly protected from the salt air. Standing on the deck of her beachside home, she imagines a life of complete independence. The sound of the waves is a constant reminder of the freedom she has finally secured. She knows she has to be smart and work hard to make this dream a reality. Every step she takes in this town is a part of her carefully constructed plan to thrive in this new world. Suddenly, a desperate scream pierces through the air and shatters her peaceful thoughts. Someone nearby is clearly in trouble and shouting for their captor to let them go. Suddenly, a desperate scream pierces through her happy daydream. Someone is shouting for help, and it sounds like things are getting violent very quickly nearby. The shady man tightens his grip on the boy's wrist while pretending he is just trying to help him find his parents. The poor kid is absolutely terrified and tries to pull away as he screams for the creep to let him go. Our protagonist watches the scene unfold from a distance and realizes the situation is becoming far more dangerous than it looks. She can sense the tension in the air as the man continues his aggressive act. The situation goes from bad to worse as the man starts dragging the panicking boy toward a dark and narrow alleyway. You can see the pure terror in the kid's voice as he realizes he is being kidnapped in broad daylight. Everything clicks into place as she realizes this is not just a simple argument between a father and son. This is a straight-up kidnapping happening right in the middle of a busy street. Suddenly, a memory of the original novel flashes through her mind as she recalls a major plot point she had completely forgotten. This city was famous for a terrifying event where a mysterious figure led children away forever. In the original story, this specific incident was supposed to be the fateful meeting that sparked the romance between the lead characters. It was the catalyst that changed everything for the main couple. Haley is so shocked by the realization that she accidentally drops her wooden bucket on the ground. She cannot believe that the main story is starting right now, and she is the only witness. Haley drops her wooden bucket in shock as the pieces finally click together. She cannot just stand there and watch while a defenseless kid gets snatched away. Her dream of a peaceful life will have to wait because there is a serious crime in progress right under her nose. She braces herself to jump into the fray and save that poor boy from his captor. She remembers from the book that these kidnappers specifically target children who look like they have no family to protect them. She takes a decisive step forward to make sure the creep does not get away. She lunges forward and pulls the boy into a tight hug before the kidnapper can even react to her presence. To make her plan work, she has to pretend that they are actually related. Haley pulls the boy close and stares into his eyes while trying to keep her cool during this performance of a lifetime. She is putting everything on the line to protect this little guy from the danger. The boy looks up at her with massive purple eyes and seems totally stunned that a complete stranger just jumped in to save him. He has no idea what is going on, but he feels a sense of relief. As she looks closer, she notices that his clothes are way too fancy for a commoner living in this town. This kid is clearly not an orphan and must belong to a very wealthy family. She immediately switches into her acting mode and begins to loudly scold the child for running away. She needs to convince everyone that they are siblings, so the kidnapper cannot argue. She turns up the drama and starts scolding the boy like he is her own brother. She calls him troublemaker and says she was worried sick when he disappeared. The kidnapper is caught completely off guard by her sudden intervention and starts to back away in confusion. He stammers and tries to make excuses now that an adult has entered the picture to challenge him. Haley plays the role of a protective older sister perfectly and tells the man that she will be much more careful with her brother from now on. In her head, she is actually telling him to get lost before things get ugly. The man finally retreats into the distance as his footsteps fade away into the city streets. They both take a moment to realize just how close they came to a terrible fate. The danger has passed for now, and the adrenaline starts to fade away. She stands in the quiet street while trying to process the fact that she just intervened in a major plot point. Once the coast is clear, Haley lets out a massive sigh of relief. The danger is gone, but now she has a very expensive-looking kid on her hands. Our protagonist gives the boy a warm and reassuring smile to help calm his nerves after the traumatic ordeal. She tells him not to worry because she is going to make sure he gets home safely. A very different thought crosses her mind as she starts to imagine gold coins falling from the sky. She realizes that returning a kid who looks this wealthy could lead to a massive payday. But then a very different thought crosses her mind as she imagines gold coins falling from the sky. She starts to realize just how wealthy this kid actually looks. A greedy little smirk starts to form in her head as she looks at the boy. She wonders if she can actually get a massive reward for finding a high-ranking noble's child. The kid drops a massive truth bomb that stops her greedy daydreams right in their tracks. He admits that he has no parents and no home to go back to, which changes everything. Haley starts spiraling as her imagination goes into overdrive while she pictures the boy's tragic backstory. She imagines him losing everything to the imperial family and being forced to work as a servant just to survive. She realizes that she probably should have kept her mouth shut instead of asking such a heavy and personal question. The silence between them becomes extremely awkward as she tries to figure out her next move. She takes a closer look at him and notices just how strikingly beautiful his purple eyes really are. Even though he is a bit of a mess, he still looks like he belongs in a royal portrait. The kid seems to be reacting to her intense staring because he lets out a small gasp of surprise. It is like he is not used to someone actually paying this much attention to him. The young boy turns bright red as he notices her staring at him so intensely. He seems completely flustered by the sudden attention and looks down to hide his embarrassment. Our protagonist is really struggling with her conscience right now as she wonders what to do with the boy. She knows she cannot just leave him alone, but adding another mouth to feed is a huge burden. She grips her dress in frustration while trying to make a final decision about the child's future. The logical part of her brain says to walk away, but her heart is telling her something different. Right as she is about to make choice, the kid looks up at her with the most heartbreaking expression imaginable. He asks her if she is really planning to abandon him right here in the street. He grabs onto her skirt and refuses to let go as if his entire life depends on her staying. It is clear that he has already decided she is his new guardian whether she likes it or not. This is just great because now the game system is rubbing her failure in her face with a literal status update. Not only is she an illegal resident, but she has now officially picked up a ruined noble kid. Haley can only stare at the screen in disbelief as she realizes her peaceful life has been ruined in a single afternoon. She can only manage to utter a single word of confusion at this turn of events. A kind villager points our girl Haley in the right direction, telling her to just keep walking over the hill for 30 minutes. Apparently the destination is easy to spot once they get there. With the directions in hand, Haley starts the long trek forward. Every step feels heavier as they move away from the comfort of the village toward an uncertain future for the little guy. Haley grips the boy's hand and keeps moving forward despite the heavy wooden bucket weighing her down. She tries her best to stay composed so the little guy doesn't pick up on her internal struggle. Baron looks up at her with those big purple eyes and asks if she is really sending him to an orphanage. You can practically hear his heart breaking in this moment as he searches for any sign of a joke. She crouches down to meet his eyes with a gentle smile that masks her own growing anxiety about the situation. She needs him to feel safe even though she is currently leading him toward an uncertain new home. The little guy has got a lot of pride though, and he looks away with a serious expression. He tells her straight up that he does not need anyone to protect him anymore. He even goes as far as telling her she can just leave him right here on the side of the road. It is a classic move from a kid trying to act tough when he is actually terrified of being alone. Haley is not having it and reminds him of the terrifying truth that he almost got kidnapped earlier. She knows the world out here is way too dangerous for a child to wander around by himself. Haley begins to spiral as she recalls all the horror stories of what happens to abandoned children in this world. She imagines the poor boy slaving away in a Mana stone mine or being sold off to heartless pirates on the high seas. She warns him that refusing help would basically lead to him becoming a slave for the rest of his life. It is a harsh reality check designed to make him understand that the orphanage is his only chance at a real future. The two share a heavy moment of silence as they look into each other's eyes and process the weight of the choice ahead. Neither one truly wants to say goodbye, but they are both trying to be brave in their own way. Haley lets out a soft sigh and continues walking while pulling him along. Her thoughts are a mess, but she is trying to convince herself that she is doing the right thing for both of them. The silence between them becomes unbearable as they continue their trek toward the outskirts of the town. Baron follows close behind his guide, while looking completely defeated by the grim reality of his situation. Haley forces a smile despite the sweat dripping down her face from the exertion and stress. She is desperately trying to keep the mood light, but the cracks in her facade are starting to show. Baron keeps his head down, staring at his feet as they move forward. He is clearly processing everything Haley said, and the fear is starting to outweigh his stubborn pride. Suddenly, the little guy stops in his tracks and complains that his legs are hurting. It is classic stalling tactic from a kid who really does not want to get to his destination. Haley stops and looks back, thinking to herself if he really hates the idea of an orphanage that much. She can tell by the way he was just walking that his legs are actually perfectly fine. She is starting to feel the pressure because she does not have time to dawdle on this road. Back home, there is a mountain of chores waiting for her, and the day is not getting any younger. Haley starts panicking as she remembers the crumbling shack she is currently forced to live in. She can almost hear her broken home begging for repairs, which makes her even more desperate to finish this task quickly. Haley decides to make a deal with him and suggests they at least go to the orphanage and take a look first. She calls him Baron and tries to sound as reasonable as possible to keep him moving. Her expression softens as she looks at the boy with genuine care. Even though she is trying to drop him off, she clearly has a soft spot for this kid that she cannot quite hide. Baron looks up at her, surprised by the sudden change in her tone. He can see the kindness in her eyes, and it makes it even harder for him to keep up his rebellious act. Our girl decides to take the easy way out and tells him to hop on her back for a ride. She is going to carry him the rest of the way just to make sure they actually get there. Baron blushes a bright red as he gets close to her, looking completely flustered. He was not expecting this kind of affection, and it totally catches him off guard. With the little guy on her back, Haley starts walking again, surrounded by a flurry of beautiful flowers. Baron mutters that he guesses he has no choice now, but he is definitely enjoying the ride. Baron tries to play it cool while resting on her back by claiming his legs were just hurting too much to walk. He uses his fatigue as a convenient excuse to enjoy the unexpected piggyback ride through the blooming flower fields. As he rests his head near her shoulder, Baron's purple eyes are filled with a strange new emotion. He is starting to see Haley as more than just a temporary guardian, and it is confusing him. But the mood shifts instantly as a flock of dark crows flies across a gloomy sky. The bright flowers are gone and replaced by an atmospheric dread that signals they are approaching their destination. They finally arrive at the orphanage, and it looks absolutely terrifying. It is a massive dark building surrounded by high iron fences that make it look more like a fortress than a home for children. Haley stares at the entrance, noting the thick iron bars and heavy padlocks securing the gate. This does not look like a place where kids are supposed to feel happy and safe at all. A wave of dread washes over Haley as she realizes the orphanage looks more like a high-security prison than a home. She desperately tries to convince herself that the interior might be more welcoming than the terrifying front gates. The terrifying atmosphere is confirmed when a cruel man starts screaming at the top of his lungs. He calls the poor children useless little leeches and orders them to work faster with a voice full of pure hatred. The heartless overseer threatens to take away their dinner if they don't finish their grueling labor before the sun goes down. 2 exhausted little boys huddle together on the ground while weeping over their miserable fate. This monster tells the orphans to wipe those pathetic looks off their faces because he provides them with food and shelter. The kids are forced to pull weeds until their hands bleed just to earn a meager scrap of food. The air is thick with the sounds of abuse and crying as the horrible truth finally sinks in for Haley. This is the hellish place she was about to abandon Baron in, and the realization makes her feel sick to her stomach. Haley walks away from that hellhole, her heart racing as the red sky reflects the horror she just witnessed. She cannot believe she almost left him there. Haley is haunted by the mental image of the starving children she saw dressed in literal rags. She knows those poor souls are being exploited by the very people who were supposed to protect them. They were covered in bruises and looked like they had not eaten in days, making her stomach turn with pure disgust. She keeps asking herself if this was really the safe place she promised Baron, and the answer is a resounding no. Memories of a lonely child huddled in the dark begin to surface, reminding Haley of the pain she is trying to save him from. Our girl is completely shaken to her core, her blue eyes wide as the weight of her near mistake finally hits her. Little Baron looks up at her with those innocent eyes, asking if he really has to go inside that scary place. Haley looks down, her heart breaking into a million pieces at the sound of his trembling voice. She takes a deep breath and makes a final decision, her gaze sharpening with a new sense of purpose and protection. Clenching her hands against her dress, she vows to never let anything like that happen to this boy ever again. She tells him he never needs to go there anymore as they walk away from the orphanage gates for good. Baron is confused and asks if the place they are heading to now is really going to be their new home. They finally arrive at the small beach shack that Haley plans to turn into their new home. Even though it looks like an abandoned ruin, it is still way better than staying at the orphanage. The poor kid looks around at the broken furniture and asks Haley how she could have possibly lived in a place like this. Haley admits that she did not originally live here, her expression turning somber as she looks over the wreckage of her current life. Her feet tap against the dusty floorboards as she begins to realize just how much work they have ahead of them. Haley surveys the interior and decides that the first order of business is getting the entire place cleaned up. Little Baron immediately agrees and gets ready to help her with the chores. Looking at the sheer scale of the mess, the little guy wonders if they can even manage to clean all of it today. He stares up at her with pure curiosity, his purple eyes shimmering in the fading light of the afternoon sun. Haley gives him a warm, reassuring smile that says everything will be just fine as long as they stay together. She gently pats his head, letting him know that he does not have to worry about anything anymore because she has got his back. They manage to get a fire going in the hearth, filling the room with a cozy warmth as Haley mentions she does not want him catching a cold. Our girl starts covering the cracked window panes with wet newspaper so that the broken glass does not fall off and hurt anyone inside. She picks up a broom and starts sweeping away the years of dust and neglect, her movements full of determined energy. Every bit of trash and debris gets swept right out the door as she works hard to reclaim her living space. The cabin finally starts to look decent, though Haley admits it is not exactly pristine just yet. She plans to keep fixing it up little by little until the whole place is comfortable for them. With the cleaning finally done, she turns to Baron with a smile and tells him it is time to make some dinner. Suddenly, she stops and blinks in surprise when she notices something unexpected from the little boy sitting across the room. Baron is sitting at the table, quietly moving the silverware around while he waits for her to start cooking their meal. She asks him what is wrong, noticing a strange look on his face that she cannot quite place just yet. Without saying a word, the boy reaches out and takes hold of her hand, his expression serious and very thoughtful. Haley looks down at him, her heart softening at the sudden gesture of affection from the child she just rescued. She warns him to be careful because the furniture is old, and he could easily end up getting a painful splinter. But Baron does not care about that, gripping her hand tightly as if he is afraid she might disappear if he lets go. He looks at her with those deep purple eyes, finally feeling safe for the first time in a very long time. Baron complains that his finger stings a little bit. He looks up at our girl with those big eyes, acting like a total sweetheart while seeking some comfort. Our girl takes his small hand in hers, surrounded by a bunch of flowers as the mood gets all soft and cozy between them. She looks genuinely worried, thinking that there might be a splinter or something stuck inside. She grips his hand tightly while the fireplace crackles in the background. Looking out the window at the sunset, she realizes that she has to take action because this is the best option they have right now to help him. Our girl tells Baron to just hold on for a second while she gets ready to fix the problem for him once and for all. Without any warning, she leans in and kisses his finger to make the pain go away. Baron completely freezes up, his face turning bright red as his brain totally short-circuits. The kiss lands perfectly, and the whole atmosphere turns into a pink blur of pure embarrassment for our little guy as he processes what happened. Baron is absolutely losing his mind and stammers out a confused question about what she is doing. He is completely flustered by the unexpected affection and does not know how to react. The shock wave of his reaction is so loud that it practically shakes the entire little cabin sitting right on the edge of the water. Later that evening, she asks him if he is still feeling shy about what happened earlier. The sky has turned a beautiful shade of purple as night starts to fall. She tells him to come over because it is almost time for bed, but Baron is acting busy by a bucket. He insists that he is not shy at all and is just putting away some conches. He explains that he put the shells in seawater earlier to purge all the sand out of them. It is a pretty domestic moment for a couple of kids living on their own. Our girl explains that if they soak them like that, they can eat them later without any of that annoying crunching. They both imagine themselves enjoying a nice meal together in the future. They leave the shells to soak through the night, so they can wake up to a fresh and delicious breakfast in the morning. She sits on the edge of the bed and beckons him over with a playful smile. Baron looks like a startled kitten, even sprouting a little imaginary tail from the sheer tension. Finally, he gives in and crawls into bed next to her. She smiles warmly, happy to have him close as they settle in for the night together. Looking down at him, she wonders if he is just not used to this kind of affection. She expects a normal kid to just snuggle right in when they get a hug like this. Baron stares back at her with those deep eyes, and you can tell there is a lot more going on in his head than he is letting on to her. The silence of the room is filled with her inner thoughts as she tries to understand why Baron is so hesitant to accept her care. She wants him to know that he does not have to be alone anymore. Our girl gently pulls him closer into a warm embrace, wanting him to feel safe and loved in this small house by the sea. A peaceful smile spreads across her face as she looks at him one last time before closing her eyes. She is completely unaware of the shift that is about to happen. He lies tucked under the blankets and quietly wishes her sweet dreams while she drifts off into a peaceful slumber. The night grows colder as the moonlight peeks through the gaps of the newspapers, covering the cracked window panes. The only sound in the room is the soft breathing of our girl as she drifts off into a deep sleep, leaving her guard completely down. She is completely out cold, resting her head on the pillow and finally relaxing after a long day of taking care of everything around the house. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as Baron slowly sits up in the dark. The sweet, innocent act he was putting on earlier has completely vanished into thin air. He stares down at her with chilling red eyes, while finally dropping the act of being a helpless and shy little boy. The young prince wanders alone along the moonlit shore while he tries to clear his head after everything that has happened. Deep in thought, he prepares himself for a reunion that most people in this world would consider a terrifying nightmare. He successfully summons the Ignis Fatuus, calling forth an ancient magical energy that serves as a beacon for his loyal soldiers. The atmosphere shifts as the ritual begins to pull a powerful soul across the boundary of life and death right to his feet. He remains completely calm, while the air vibrates with enough raw power to incinerate any normal human standing this close. The boy catches the orb of light with ease, proving he still retains the legendary mana control from his previous life. He narrows his red eyes as he senses his commander finally approaching through the rift he just opened between worlds. A massive presence looms over the beach as he greets his visitor, noting that his timing is as perfect as always. The headless commander arrives with his familiar perched nearby, ready to receive new orders from his long-lost master. The terrifying knight immediately drops to his knee to show that his loyalty hasn't wavered even after all these years. Despite his intimidating armor, the knight is actually trembling with emotion as he finally reunites with his true king. The knight introduces himself as Dullahan, formally announcing that he has answered his majesty's call. It is a shocking reveal, seeing this legendary warrior bowing his head to a child and treating him like royalty. The commander waits for the signal to proceed with his report, ensuring that no one else is around to hear their secrets. Dullahan begins to speak about the current situation, specifically mentioning a monster invasion that occurred at the northern gate. He is here to provide the tactical updates that our boy needs to plan his next move. Since the last large-scale annihilation battle, the monsters have stayed hidden and have not dared to show their faces again. The beach is silent as the knight explains how the enemy has been completely suppressed for the time being. Our boy thinks back to the moment he brought down the Sword of Destruction, a move so powerful it terrified every monster in the land. The memory shows a tall, imposing figure draped in a red cape, standing over a cliff with a legendary blade in hand. That was his true form, a ruler who commanded an undead army to monitor the perimeter of his territory. The report continues as Dullahan confirms that the monsters are still too scared to come anywhere near the border. It seems the reputation of our boy's past self is doing most of the heavy lifting while he is in this form. Our protagonist listens intently, his red eyes narrowing as he processes the information. He is calculating his next move, knowing that his current physical limitations mean he has to be smarter than ever before to stay ahead. As he looks at his small hands, a massive shadow of his former adult self looms behind him, reminding us of who he really is. He thinks to himself that sending his army through the gate was the right call, even if the process turned his body into that of a young child. Dullahan estimates that it will take about 3 years for our boy to regain his original stature and power. 3 years is a long time to play the part of a kid, especially when you have a kingdom to run and enemies to crush. Our boy issues a stern command to cut down any monsters on sight and report back if their numbers start to grow again. Dullahan accepts the orders without hesitation, but then he pauses, clearly curious about something else on his mind. The knight asks a blunt question, wondering why a powerful king would choose to stay in such a shabby and run-down place. It is a funny moment that breaks the serious tension, as the ghostly knight looks around the empty beach in confusion. Our boy looks away, thinking that there is definitely a specific reason for his current choice of location. He is not just hiding out for fun. He is following a lead that requires a more subtle touch than a direct invasion. He reflects on how his plan started, realizing that things have become much more complicated than he initially anticipated. Sometimes even a king has to improvise when his body is not quite what it used to be. In a flashback, the silhouette of a man leading a child through a dark alleyway. Our boy intended to use his childlike appearance as a perfect cover to solve a high-profile kidnapping case without drawing any suspicion. He recalls the high-ranking noblewoman who first set this entire investigation in motion with her suspicious behavior. The commander listens to the details of the mission, realizing that his master is playing a much deeper game than before. He vows to crush anyone standing in the way of the king's plan, even if it means acting from the shadows for now. Our boy stays silent for a moment, looking out at the horizon while the weight of his mission settles on his shoulders. He knows that solving this case is the first step toward reclaiming everything he lost during the regression. Their secret meeting concludes as the messenger bird prepares to head back to the northern border with new instructions. The bird disappears into the night sky, carrying the weight of the kingdom's future on its dark wings. The knight prepares to return to his own realm, now that he has confirmed his master is safe and sound. The boy watches the shadows fade, knowing that he has successfully re-established a connection with his most powerful allies. Before leaving, the companion gives him a lingering look, as if it's still worried about his current vulnerable state. Our protagonist finally breaks his silence, telling the knight that he is being awfully talkative today. It is a classic move from our boy, dismissing the knight's concerns with a bit of dry humor before getting back to his secret mission. The knight's glowing visor flickers one last time, as he feels a surge of pride for his master's unwavering spirit. Our protagonist dismisses his commander through the portal, telling him to maintain a strict watch until they meet again. The instructions are clear and cold, as the text demands that Black Livia must pass this specific location along to someone named Raven. This secret message is clearly the start of a major move. A massive raven perches on the shoulder of a noble as they realize return to the north is not happening anytime soon. The bird's glowing eyes suggest it is more than just a simple messenger. He sends a final pulse of mana into the sky to seal the gateway and ensure that no prying eyes can track the knight's departure. She carefully considers her situation inside the cottage and realizes that keeping her distance from the boy is the smartest move for now. Our main girl is finally fast asleep and looking totally peaceful for once after all the chaos she has been through lately. Her blonde hair is spread out across the pillow in the soft morning light. She slowly opens her eyes and tries to figure out where she is after waking up from her long and exhausting rest. The dark-haired boy named Baron is standing right there with a tiny and adorable smile on his face. He looks like he has been waiting for her to wake up this whole time. She looks at the window and realizes their living situation is still quite rough with old newspaper barely holding the broken glass together. Our girl gets dressed in a simple blue and white dress with an apron looking like she is ready for a day of hard work. She grabs a basket and prepares to head out. She notices the boy has a little injury on his finger and tells him they can go out together once it is fully healed. Her caring nature is really starting to show through here. She gives the little dark-haired boy a playful pat on the head to cheer him up despite his best efforts to act tough. Looking back at the cottage by the sea, our girl feels a sense of relief and happiness in this quiet moment. The wooden house on stilts is the perfect peaceful getaway from royal drama. Baron rubs his head where she patted him, and he looks a little flustered by the whole interaction. He is trying his best to act tough despite being so small and cute. He continues to wear a fancy purple vest, which looks completely out of place for a child living in a seaside shack. Our girl heads down to the shore where the bright blue sky meets the sparkling water of the ocean. She is looking for something specific among the waves today. She wades out into the crystal clear water with her bucket nearby, and the cool waves feel amazing against her skin. This is the definition of a relaxing tropical afternoon. She realizes the local beach is an absolute goldmine for food, since the seafood here grows to an incredibly large size. She peers down into the sparkling blue depths and wonders if the local villagers simply do not come out this far. Everything looks so untouched and full of life beneath the surface. The thought of Baron eating a giant delicious shell makes her giggle as she imagines his happy reaction. She is determined to bring back the best feast possible for him tonight. Her eyes widen as she suddenly connects the dots about the original story she remembers. Something about this timeline is starting to bother her, and she needs to stay alert. She realizes that the fact Baron was almost kidnapped means the events of the original plot are still in motion. That means the real male lead named Bloden should arrive soon. A dark silhouette of a man with piercing red eyes appears in her mind as she thinks of Bloden. He is known for his cold demeanor and black hair, and he is definitely trouble. She remembers a dark secret about the imperial bloodline and the terrifying special abilities that are only passed down to those with royal blood. She thinks about how the entire imperial family tree has been ruined, since both of the young boy's parents died under mysterious circumstances. Our girl clenches her fist tightly as she feels a surge of determination to protect the life she has built here. She won't let the original tragedy repeat itself if she can help it. She recalls the tragic moment the poor boy was cast out and literally fell from grace into the cold wilderness below. She visualizes the layout of the port and the arrangement of the boats as she starts planning her next move. Our girl considers the side effects that can change a person's physical age, but she notes that the eye color is completely different. This mystery is getting more complicated by the minute. She reflects on the fact that the young boy is the last remaining survivor from a noble house that was completely wiped out. Looking at the boy's face, she sees nothing but innocence and curiosity in his big purple eyes. He is so far removed from the cold person he was supposed to become. Our girl thinks he is just so cute and lovely, which is the exact opposite of how the original Bloden was described. She is starting to really enjoy this version of the story. She gets so busy collecting these giant shells, and conscious that she completely fails to notice the sun is already setting. She stands in the shallow waves as the last bit of sunlight hits the water and turns everything purple. With her bucket full of food, she prepares to head home after a long day. Our girl is rushing back as fast as she can because she promised to be home before sunset, and she is definitely running behind schedule. She is kicking herself for not lighting a signal fire on the beach before she left for the day. Just as she is hurrying along through the twilight, something catches her eye and makes her stop dead in her tracks. A mysterious white light starts blinking in the distance and cuts through the fading evening sky like a bright beacon. Her heart skips a beat as she realizes that blinking light is coming from one very specific and familiar direction. She finally makes it back to the safety of the little wooden cabin, just as the sun disappears behind the horizon. She picks up the pace, and her footsteps hit the wooden porch with a steady thud as she finally makes it back to the house. The mysterious light is gone now, but she finds the young boy sitting quietly on the steps in the doorway waiting for her arrival. He wastes no time calling her out, asking what took her so long since she promised to be back before the sun went down. She can only offer a sheepish apology and admit she is later than she thought. Our boy looks up with those intense purple eyes, and you can tell he has got something serious on his mind. She asks him if anything weird happened while she was away, and mentions that she saw a strange white light blinking near the house earlier. He looks at her with a completely blank expression, and simply says the word firefly as if that explains everything she saw. In his head, he knows exactly what she saw, and thinks about a rare type of bug called an ignis that gives off a light as big as a fist. He remembers them in the garden of his old house. These magical bugs are special because they appear out of nowhere, blink with a blinding intensity, and then vanish in a flash like a camera bulb. It is basically a natural flashlight that hits like a strobe light before disappearing into the night and leaving everyone in the dark again. The boy watches her as she stands there with her heavy bucket, looking completely exhausted from her long day of working on the beach. He starts thinking to himself that maybe he should do something to make her life a little bit easier while he is stuck here under her care. He tells her he could actually tame one of those lights for her, and it would be super helpful to have a personal light when she is out catching fish in the dark. Deep down, he knows he needs this commoner's help for a few more days, so he figures attaching a magical light to her is a fair trade for her services. Our girl considers the offer and realizes having a portable light at sea would be a total game changer since she cannot afford real lanterns. The boy sits back and expects her to beg him for the magical favor since he thinks everyone is driven by greed. She does something he totally did not expect by reaching out to pat him right on his head like a child. She tells him there is no need for a little kiddo to overdo it, because she is perfectly capable of handling her work alone. He just stands there frozen with a bead of sweat on his face, while she gives him a big smile and a gentle head pat. She tells him it is time to get dinner ready and offers to check on his wound while he washes his hands. Our little Baron is left standing there with a bunch of literal question marks floating over his head because his plan to bribe her failed. He is completely losing it because she just turned down a massive magical advantage just because she thinks she can handle things herself. He is used to adults who only care about their own interests and using children for whatever they can get. She heads inside with her bucket of food, totally unaware that she just broke this kid's entire worldview with a single gesture of kindness. He flashes back to the people he used to know, like the woman who took him to the orphanage, just to look like she had goodwill for others. She calls out to him with a cheerful voice while she moves around the kitchen area to prepare their meal. He stands at the door and watches her with a confused expression as he tries to understand her selfless nature. She turns back and gives him the most genuine and warm smile he has probably ever seen in his entire life, while she giggles to herself. The boy is staring at her simple apron, and the way she carries herself with such honest and simple kindness that he cannot understand. His purple eyes go wide as the realization hits him that she actually meant what she said and isn't trying to manipulate him or use him at all. He slowly starts walking toward her with his tiny shoes clicking on the wooden floor as he makes a decision about their relationship. For now, he is going to follow her lead and see where this weirdly wholesome situation goes as she sets the table for their dinner. Our girl is making moves at the local market. A friendly merchant welcomes her with a big smile, clearly happy to see his favorite supplier. He is singing her praises because the goods she brings in have been top tier lately. Our girl is just relieved to hear that her hard work is paying off. Even her little brother is there, looking adorable as he bends at the waist politely to the older man. This family is honestly too wholesome for their own good. The merchant cannot believe how capable she is for her age. In 20 years of business, he has never seen anyone quite like this young woman. She lists off everything she brought in, from sea snails to blue crabs. It sounds like she practically emptied the ocean to get this batch ready. Hard work equals a big payday. The merchant hands over a heavy bag of coins, and you can practically hear the satisfying jingle of that gold as he makes the payment. He tells her to keep the fresh stuff coming next time. Our girl promises she will work even harder to catch more and keep the business booming. But as they leave, the merchant starts overthinking. He wonders how a young lady without a single crab trap manages to catch blue crabs that only come out at night. Meanwhile, her little brother has other priorities on his mind. He looks up at her and admits he is getting pretty hungry after all that walking. Our girl takes him by the hand and leads him through the town. They have got money in their pockets now, so it is time to do some much-needed shopping. First on the list is a sturdy new basket. They are basically building up their inventory from scratch, and every piece of equipment matters for their new life. They also need some proper cooking utensils. It is the little things that make a house feel like a home, especially when you are starting over from nothing. Look at that haul. The basket is already stuffed with supplies, blankets, and tools they will need for their daily chores and surviving out in the world. She managed to find everything for way cheaper than she expected, which means they are still safely under budget while her brother watches her with a suspicious look. He looks absolutely precious standing there among the flowers. You would never guess there is more to this kid than meets the eye, but he has a very distinct aura about him. The little boy looks completely frozen as he stammers out the start of a sentence, making it seem like he is about to reveal a life-changing secret. Suddenly, he pulls out a small jar of milk he wanted. He holds it up like it is the most important treasure in the world, hoping his sister will say yes. Our girl pauses to think about it. Is it really worth spending their precious coins on a tiny snack right now when they have so many other things to buy? She decides it is fine since it does not cost much anyway. You have got to treat yourself every once in a while, especially when you have been working as hard as them. With the shopping done, she suggests they start heading back. The market is busy, and they have got a lot of heavy stuff to carry back to their place. She insists that she is totally fine carrying the massive basket. She flashes a bright smile, trying to act like the weight does not bother her at all. Her brother is not having it and reaches out to help. He tells her that if a kid carries it, it will feel even heavier, which is a weird thing to say. She gives him a doubtful look. She appreciates the gesture, but there is no way a tiny kid can handle this kind of load without hurting himself. She starts doing the math in her head. Can a child really help out with a basket that is nearly half his size? She is clearly worried about him. This little kid just reaches down and hoists the entire heavy basket over his head, like it weighs absolutely nothing while his sister watches in total disbelief. He proves he possesses absolute superhuman strength by lifting the massive load high into the air without breaking a single sweat. He just stands there with a proud grin on his face. He is acting like he did not just defy the laws of physics right in front of his big sister. He admits it is a little uncomfortable because he is short, but otherwise he says it is easy. Our girl is literally frozen in shock behind him. She finally finds her voice and asks how on earth he is so strong. Her eyes are wide, and she looks like she just saw something supernatural happen. He explains that his family, the Viscount Eldit family, were knights for generations. He figures his father was strong too, so he just inherited those beastly knight genes. This kid is not just any random survivor. He is actually the sole heir of an exterminated noble family who possesses incredible latent power. She realizes she is dealing with a future powerhouse. This is a massive revelation that changes everything she thought she knew about her situation and her brother. Her expression turns serious as she looks at him. The weight of this discovery is finally starting to sink in as she realizes who he really is. Every single detail she is witnessing now was actually foreshadowed in the original story, where his family lost their titles and their entire fortune. If the original story holds true, this boy will grow up to be a monster. And that blade of revenge he is carrying will eventually be aimed at the Empire. Blood stains a blade resting beneath a golden crown. This is the dark future waiting for the boy. Looking at this specific route, it seems like his future is already written in stone by fate. He is destined to become a legendary swordmaster who is completely driven by a thirst for revenge. Our girl realizes she made a massive wrong guess about what this boy's destiny was actually supposed to be. This heartbreak sparks a bloody rebellion against the very empire he once served, until he eventually rises to become the legendary commander of the Imperial Knights. Thinking about Baron's tragic fate in the original story, our girl can't help but feel a deep sense of pity for the little guy. His fate was always supposed to be a heart-wrenching tragedy, according to the original story details. Our girl cannot help but tear up thinking about how much this little guy is going to suffer later. She reaches out to pat his soft, dark hair, feeling a massive surge of protectiveness over him. Her gaze softens as a brand new resolve takes root deep inside her heart right now. She decides right then and there that she will eliminate Baron's death flag no matter what it takes. The plan is simple. She will make tons of money and keep his belly full of delicious food. She even starts imagining him grown up and happy with a lovely girlfriend of his own one day. That is exactly the kind of normal and happy life he deserves to have after everything he endured. She refuses to let him live a life chased by poverty like she did in her previous world. One side of her mind sees the bright path, while the other remembers the cold, dark shadows of her past struggle. She decides to pour every ounce of her love into this kid, while they walk through the village together like a perfect family. Seeing his bright smile makes her even more determined to protect this happiness. To make this dream a reality, she thinks about working late into the night foraging for extra supplies. She looks out at the sunset and realizes it is finally time to start her secret nightly work to provide for them. The calm waves and lack of wind convince her that conditions are perfect for a quick trip down to the shore tonight. She tells Baron that she needs to head down to the sea for a while and asks him to look after the house while she is gone. He is confused why she would go out when it is almost dark, but she promises to return fast. Our girl starts rummaging through their things with a bit of nervous energy to find her tools. She wonders where that dip net she bought earlier went, while Baron watches her every single move carefully. The little guy spots the basket and tools sitting right there on the floor near the storage crates. She finishes packing her basket and makes sure all her tools are ready before she heads out into the evening air. As soon as she disappears from view, the atmosphere on the beach suddenly shifts into something much more intense and heavy. The sound of the wind carries a strange tension as she finally disappears from view into the distance. A mysterious and deep voice calls out to the young boy with a title that suggests he is much more than a simple orphan. Dark shadows swirl around him as a mysterious voice addresses him as Your Majesty. The atmosphere turns heavy and oppressive in an instant as the truth begins to unravel beneath the rising moonlight. A figure emerges from the dark shadows and offers a deep bend to show absolute loyalty to the young boy standing there. Raven Arner steps forward with the air of an elegant, noble man who has been desperately searching for his missing master. He explains that he rushed to this desolate location the very second he received a secret message from someone named Black Livia. Raven places his hand over his heart to offer a formal salute as he waits for the boy to acknowledge his presence. He stares at the rundown shack in disbelief and wonders why a powerful figure like Bloden Ilfane is staying at such a place. Look at this place. Black Livia stood on the desolate shore and wondered why a powerful figure like Bloden Ilfane would be hanging out at such a rundown beach shack. It was just sand, debris, and the sound of crashing waves. He could not wrap his head around why someone of that stature would choose such a miserable location. The loyal servant struggles to process this surreal situation, while trying to maintain his professional composure in front of the boy. Raven asks his master who he could possibly be waiting for in such lonely spot far away from the imperial palace. The little guy turns around and drops a massive bombshell by casually revealing that he started a new household with his sister. This shocking news hits Raven like a physical blow, as his entire understanding of the royal hierarchy is shattered in an instant. His brain completely short-circuits as he stares at the boy while trying to make sense of this impossible and ridiculous claim. The contrast between his high-class status and this wild news is so great that he can no longer keep his cool. Raven finally screams out in total disbelief, as the sheer absurdity of the situation echoes across the quiet and empty beach. Can you believe this? The noble emperor of the entire Ilpine Empire is being raised by some random citizen out in the middle of nowhere. Our boy might look like a regular kid with those big red eyes, but the weight of a whole kingdom is on his small shoulders. This secret is huge, and nobody is supposed to know the truth. Baron explains that Haley is just a commoner who resides like a beggar, yet she is currently responsible for raising the future ruler of the entire world. Raven feels a massive headache coming on just thinking about the absolute absurdity of the current situation. Baron points toward the horizon and mentions that Haley went out to the sea late at night just to gather some conches. Raven worries about what kind of monsters are lurking in the water now that the sun has finally gone down. The beautiful water carries a deadly current that hides the monsters currently roaming around in the middle of the night. Haley realizes she made a massive mistake coming out here without a torch because she cannot see a single thing in this darkness. She decides to check between the rocks one last time before giving up completely unaware that something is bubbling up from the depths. The shadows are moving as the secret truth behind this empire begins to slowly unfold in the dark. Haley let out a little sound of surprise as she noticed something strange moving in the dark water. She has no idea that she is about to come face to face with a monster. A terrifying liquid monster rises from the depths to strike, while the girl is still distracted by her search for shells. The girl remains completely oblivious to the giant blob of death behind her, while complaining about how many conches she keeps tripping over. Haley believes she found a fantastic foraging spot without realizing she actually walked into a dangerous nest. She celebrates her lucky find with a huge smile, while wondering why nobody else ever comes to such a perfect foraging spot. Raven continues to worry about her being in such high-risk area alone, and wonders if it is really all right for her to be there. Baron flashes a mischievous smile and casually asks Raven about the sea slime's hidden weakness like it is a normal conversation. Raven is caught completely off guard by the sudden question and stares at the boy in stunned silence while trying to process the request. The girl finally notices a massive shadow looming over her and starts to wonder what could possibly be blocking the light. The water splashes violently as the monster prepares to strike while something inside her basket begins to vibrate with energy. A small jar hidden among the shells suddenly emits a blinding light that pierces through the darkness of the night. Haley is caught in the middle of a massive explosion of magical energy that erupts directly from her foraging basket. She panics as the basket begins to shake violently and has no idea what is causing this sudden magical phenomenon. Haley stares in utter disbelief as she witnesses the incredible power of the artifact Baron gave to her earlier. The brilliant light from the jar pushes back the shadows and reveals the terrifying monsters that were hunting her moments ago. The slime monsters immediately lose their aggression and sink back into the ocean to escape the searing intensity of the light. She gazes at the glowing jar with a look of pure amazement as she realizes it just saved her from a terrible fate. Haley wonders if this is the specific creature her little Baron mentioned to her earlier today. Chibai Haley is suddenly back to her cheerful self, humming a happy tune while holding her magic jar. She looks down into the clear water and gasps when she sees all the sea life revealed by the light. The danger is gone, and it's time to get back to fishing. She starts shouting for Baron to wait as she prepares to catch every single creature the magic light has uncovered. Raven can only cover his face in frustration after witnessing her reckless behavior and complete lack of self-preservation. Baron knows these monsters are nothing more than trivial bugs to him, even though they are a death sentence for any ordinary person. Raven explains that a normal human would not stand a chance against these creatures, and would die before they could even fight back. Raven finishes his dramatic lecture while feeling proud of his vast knowledge, despite having a bored student. A massive burst of white light fills the entire area as the spirit power activates. Everything is consumed by the blinding glow of pure energy. Raven reveals that Ignis is actually a high-ranking spirit, and that summoning such a being requires an immense amount of power. The shadows began to swirl as the protagonist mentioned the consequences of summoning a Dullahan and an entire undead legion. It was a power move that came with a heavy price and a long recovery time. Raven warns that summoning the undead legion will drain the boy's power and prevent him from returning to his original form for a long time. His crimson eyes flashed with a level of determination you wouldn't expect from someone so young as he stared into the distance. Baron reaches out his hand and calls for Cayman to awaken as the ground begins to rumble with incredible force. Deep beneath the soil, massive roots and ancient energy began to shift and surge upward through the dark earth. Our boy doesn't even flinch as the massive rock golem erupts from the ground, proving that his control over nature is absolute. Despite its terrifying size, the golem seemed surprisingly docile as it looked down at its master, while dust fell from its stone body. The protagonist issues a direct command to the stone giant that just emerged from the earth in the name of the sovereign. He told Cayman to get to work securing the foundation of the nearby cottage so it wouldn't collapse. On top of that, the giant was tasked with cleaning up all the rubble in the surrounding area. Using a legendary high spirit for simple home repairs is the ultimate power move for a main character with nothing to prove. But our boy wasn't finished yet as he reached out his hand to manifest another spark of power into the night sky. He looked down with a focused gaze, preparing to bring forth another high-ranking spirit to join the crew and finish the job. A burst of flame takes the shape of a fire lizard known as Salamander, another high spirit that most people would spend their lives searching for. The little fire lizard nuzzles his cheek with affection, proving even ancient spirits have a soft side for their chosen master. He gave the fire spirit its orders, telling it to light a bonfire and keep the embers alive inside the house so they could stay warm. The man with glasses is practically hyperventilating as he watches legendary spirits perform simple household chores with absolute precision. He instructs the man to lie to the imperial palace about his location, so he can finally live a normal life without any royal interference. He whispers a secret command, and the man lowers his head in total submission, promising to obey every word from his majesty. A dark and ominous shadow clings to his silhouette as he walks away, hinting at the terrifying power he is currently suppressing. He paused for a moment, lost in his own thoughts as he stared off into the distance with those piercing eyes. He reflects on his current actions and realizes he is simply doing whatever is necessary to repay the girl for her kindness. The water rippled and sprayed as something moved quickly through the tide near the shore. The blonde girl emerges from the surf with a massive basket of crabs and a radiant smile despite the late hour. She looked at a jar in her hand and asked him when he even managed to catch something and put it in there so fast. He finally finds a moment of true happiness and peace during their quiet night together under the stars. Surrounded by the scent of flowers and the quiet night, he finally felt a sense of peace he had long forgotten in his past life. The violent storm feels like a dark omen of the chaos and destruction that is about to descend on the Empire. The mere mention of the Kingdom of Kate makes everyone in the royal chambers grow silent as the weight of the situation sinks in. The attendant hesitates for a second before delivering the mysterious sealed letter that just arrived from across the border. A woman with blue hair and expensive jewelry took the letter, her lips curling into a mysterious and confident expression. Only one person is left who truly carries the blood of Ilpine within their veins to keep the Empire alive. The dark screen revealed the name that everyone in the capital whispered with both respect and fear: Bloden Ilpine. The young prince represents the final hope for the imperial bloodline as he prepares to inherit the weight of the crown. The text revealed that there were only 2 years left until he reached the age of adulthood, and could finally take his place. The regent realizes her era of absolute power is finally coming to an end. As the young prince approaches the age of adulthood, the regent looks down at the letter with a cold gaze, proving she is not ready to hand over her power to the prince. Deep down, she knows her time as regent is technically over, but she is making it clear that she has no intention of stepping down quietly. Dark energy crackles through the air as her resolve hardens. Anna Beldenborough claims that the master of the throne must possess supernatural powers, regardless of their bloodline or name. The two of them enjoy a peaceful afternoon together at a sunlit cafe, while discussing their plans for the upcoming week. Our boy Baron is sitting across from his companion, staring at his food with a look of pure disbelief. He thinks to himself that this commoner girl is definitely going a bit overboard with all this hospitality. The blonde girl is absolutely beaming as she explains her situation. She mentions that she made a decent amount of money from her foraging trip yesterday and wants to share the bounty. She reaches out and asks him to pass his plate over. It is clear she wants to make sure Baron is well fed and taken care of during their lunch together. The meat is so tender that the knife slides right through, revealing a perfectly cooked center that makes their mouths water. Baron takes a tiny bite and is immediately overwhelmed by how incredibly delicious the high-quality meal tastes. She watches him with wide eyes and holds her breath while waiting to see if he actually likes the food. She lets out a happy little giggle and tells Baron to eat as much as he wants. She seems genuinely thrilled to see him enjoying himself and does not hold back on the encouragement. Every single plate on the table is picked clean as Baron leans back and sighs in total satisfaction. They continue their conversation at the table, surrounded by the remnants of their feast. The blonde girl is laughing and smiling, clearly happy that her plan to treat him went so well. Baron listens closely as she explains how they managed to find so much success during her latest foraging trip. She holds up a little jar of light and explains how it changed everything for her. Because of that light, she was able to keep foraging even when the sun went down, which boosted her earnings. She rests her head on her hand and beams at him with the most sincere smile she has ever given him. She makes it very clear that all of her recent success is thanks to him. Without Baron, she probably would not have been able to achieve nearly as much as she did. She wants him to know his worth. Baron is totally caught off guard by her sudden warmth and can't even find the words to respond to her praise. Baron feels a bashful blush creeping up his cheeks and tries to play it cool by telling her not to mention it. The girl reflects on how their relationship has shifted over time. She originally told herself she would take good care of Baron, but somehow she ended up being the one getting all the help instead. She suddenly realizes that he has become a much bigger support system in her life than she ever expected. Baron looks up with a surprised expression as she prepares to suggest something big. He has no idea that she is about to drop a major proposal regarding his future and his finances. They both get serious as they sit across from each other to discuss the most important part of their partnership. She presents a scroll and suggests opening a bank account in his name. It is a huge step toward securing his future and making sure he has his own resources to rely on. Baron is completely caught off guard by the idea of a bank account. He looks at her with wide eyes, wondering if she is actually serious about giving him so much control over the money. She starts explaining her plan to split her earnings fairly, so he can finally start building up his own wealth. She envisions a grand and prestigious academy, seeing it as the key to helping him achieve his true potential and a glorious future. The girl lets out a bright laugh, clearly excited about the grand future she is imagining for him. She is full of energy and optimism, which is a stark contrast to Baron's more reserved nature. She confidently explains her role as his manager, promising to back him up no matter what path he chooses to take. Baron looks a bit worried as he listens to her go on and on. He is starting to realize that she might be getting a little too carried away with her plans for his life. She believes he could become a legendary knight and reclaim his noble title if he just attends the elite academy. Baron quickly interjects, telling her that he really does not need any of those fancy titles or knightly honors. He is trying his best to change the subject before she gets even more wild ideas. He thinks to himself that this clueless commoner is definitely going to do something crazy again. He can see the gears turning in her head and it is making him more than a little nervous. She notices his flustered reaction and teases him for getting shy. She finds his embarrassment adorable, which only makes Baron feel even more awkward and self-conscious about the whole situation. She insists that her plan is foolproof and tells him to trust her vision for his glorious future. Baron suddenly stands up from his chair, slamming his hands on the table in protest. He loudly declares that it is not like that at all, trying to regain some control over the conversation. He gets right in her face and tries his hardest to make her understand his actual point of view. He finally gives in to her teasing and crosses his arms with a pout, admitting that he secretly wanted both things. Our girl insisted on giving the boy a lift, but he was feeling a bit shy about it. He claimed he could just walk since he was full anyway, but she wasn't having any of that modesty today. Our boy looked up with those big purple eyes, clearly feeling pampered by his big sister's sudden burst of affection. She pointed out that he had walked a ton today and deserved a break. She even made sure his new clothes were perfectly tailored, showing just how much she cares about his appearance. Finally, he gave in and hopped onto her back for a piggyback ride. She carried him with a huge smile, looking like the happiest sister in the world while they traveled together. They moved along through the beautiful flowers, her dress swaying with every step she took. It was a peaceful moment for the pair, just enjoying the scenery and each other's company. The little Baron leaned in close, resting his head on her shoulder as they moved. You could really feel the bond between them in this quiet, heartfelt moment of sibling love. The sky was starting to turn a beautiful shade of purple and pink as the sun began to set. Everything felt magical, with little sparkles dancing in the air above the lush green leaves. They finally reached the coast, where the waves were gently lapping against the sandy shore. It was the perfect spot to unwind after a long day of walking and exploring the area. Just as they were enjoying the view, our girl spotted something that made her stop in her tracks. Her eyes widened in surprise as she looked toward their usual path home. A massive pile of construction materials sat right where nothing existed this morning. It looked like someone was planning to build a fancy new villa right on their doorstep in this remote area. She couldn't help but compare the high-quality materials to their own humble little shack nearby. Our boy looked a bit overwhelmed while she wondered if their home looked even worse by comparison now. It was honestly baffling to think that anyone would want to move out to a remote beach like this. She stared at the stacks of stone and wood, trying to make sense of the situation. She figured they would just have to wait and see who the mysterious owner was once the project was finished. For now, it was just a strange and unexpected addition to their quiet life. She suggests to the little boy that they should head back inside, as the sun begins to set over the mysterious construction site. Suddenly, our girl noticed a dark figure lingering near the side of their house. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized they weren't alone, and someone was watching them from the wooden porch. The tension in the air became thick enough to cut with a knife as she processed the intrusion. Everything felt different now that their private sanctuary had been breached by a total stranger. She wondered who it could possibly be since they weren't expecting any visitors today. Her mind raced through all the possibilities, and none of them felt particularly safe or comforting in the moment. She immediately worries about the kidnapper returning and holds the boy tight to protect him from any potential danger. Her boots crunched on the dirt as she came to a sudden halt, her body tensing up for a potential confrontation. She needed to be ready for whatever was waiting for them around that corner. A man with long dark hair and glasses stepped into view, looking quite surprised himself. He had an air of elegance about him, but his sudden appearance was still deeply unsettling to her. The stranger greets them politely, but is visibly shocked when he finally sees the girl's face up close. She stands there completely paralyzed, while trying to make sense of the refined man standing on her porch. She is absolutely stunned to realize that the man standing before them is actually royalty, and wonders why His Majesty is acting so flustered. Our boy finally asked to be put down, breaking the awkward silence that had fallen over the group. He seemed much calmer than his sister, who was still trying to process the entire encounter. She gathered her courage and asked the man who he was and why he was hanging around their house. She stood protectively in front of the Baron, waiting for a direct answer from the intruder. The man looked down at his polished boots and apologized, explaining that he thought the hut was abandoned. He was just looking around and was quite surprised to find that he actually had neighbors. He looked like a high-ranking official or a wealthy lord, dressed in a stunning blue and black coat with intricate details. He offered a polite smile, trying to ease the obvious tension. He suggests they should try to be friendly neighbors from now on, but she remains deeply suspicious of his true intentions. The air feels heavy with anticipation as a mysterious greeting breaks the silence. A new player has entered the game, and he is making quite the first impression with just a few polite words. Haley looks absolutely stunned as the man introduces himself as Raven, while she stands there in her simple apron, and he radiates pure refinement. He hides something deep behind those glasses despite his gentle smile, giving off a mysterious aura that most commoners would never be able to fully understand. Everything clicks for our protagonist, as she realizes this man is actually a major character from the novel who serves as the trusted aide to the male lead. Raven adjusts his glasses with a calculated grace that screams high society. Every single movement he makes is precise and polished, as if he is constantly aware of his own image and status. Our protagonist realizes he fits the description of Raven Arner perfectly, which confirms his secret identity and sets the stage for the trouble that is about to follow. For a split second, Raven looks a bit caught off guard by the intense way Haley is staring at him. A tiny bead of sweat drops down his face as he tries to maintain his cool composure under her scrutiny. He quickly recovers and offers another friendly smile while placing a gloved hand over his heart, determined to keep this social interaction moving forward smoothly. Haley shifts the topic toward the construction happening nearby, because it is impossible to ignore the fact that he is planning to build a massive mansion right here. Raven beams with pride as he explains his intention to build a grand and beautiful estate that will surely stand out in this simple rural area. Baron finally snaps and points out the obvious flaw by telling the man that from where he is standing, the foundation looks like the size of their tiny shack. A quick look at the building site shows stacks of high-quality lumber and construction materials, making it clear that someone spent a fortune on these supplies. The gears are turning in Baron's head as he stares at the expensive wood and wonders exactly what this rich guy plans to do with all the leftover materials. Our protagonist flashes a suspicious and overly sweet grin that immediately sets off alarm bells for Haley, who knows her little brother is up to something devious. Baron starts probing for an opening by asking what will happen to the extra supplies, basically shamelessly asking for a handout since they clearly won't all be used. Haley lunges forward and grabs the kid to shut him up before he ruins their reputation, apologizing profusely while dragging the greedy brat away from the site. She slaps her forehead in pure frustration because she cannot believe her brother is being so blunt. In her mind, she can see him acting like a smug little prince, and it is driving her absolutely crazy. Haley starts imagining the worst-case scenario where Baron grows up to be a total nightmare of a person if she does not correct his behavior immediately. She leans down to get on his level and tries to explain the importance of being polite to neighbors, but Baron just looks bored by the lecture. Our main guy wonders if he should actually start using polite speech like the girl keeps telling him to do. He flashes a mischievous grin while she absolutely loses her mind. She gives him final stern warning about his attitude, because she is not about to let him embarrass their family in front of the refined neighbor again. Our girl bows deeply to apologize one more time, but Raven surprisingly waves it off and tells her he does not mind the kid's lack of manners. The man actually encourages Baron to keep speaking however he wishes, because he finds the honesty refreshing, leaving Haley completely speechless and confused by his response. Raven glows with a friendly light as he claims this interaction makes them feel like actual neighbors, but Haley is still wondering if this guy is being serious. Baron stands there looking incredibly smug and satisfied with himself, while Haley continues to worry. It is a hilarious dynamic between the three of them as they try to navigate this new social circle. They finally exchange a proper handshake to seal the deal of their new friendship, as Haley officially introduces herself and her brother Baron to the mysterious man. As the sun begins to set, she offers some parting words of encouragement for the project, while Raven looks forward to seeing them both again very soon. Later that evening, back in their humble shack, Haley reflects on the day and tells Baron that their new neighbor seems like a generous and easygoing person. Baron suddenly stops in his tracks with a look of pure shock and disbelief on his face, because he cannot believe his sister was actually fooled by that act. The kid is literally vibrating with internal rage as he repeats the word wonderful in his head. He is having a total meltdown because his sister has clearly been fooled by the stranger's polite act. While Haley is humming a happy tune and doing chores, our boy is sitting at the table fuming. He is absolutely disgusted that she thinks so highly of a guy that he considers to be a major obstacle. Baron is overthinking every second of their brief conversation and trying to figure out what part of Raven was so impressive, since they only spoke for a moment. He looks down and thinks about the hidden motives behind everything that happened today, already plotting his next move to regain control of the situation. The truth finally comes out in his inner monologue as he reveals he originally brought this man next door to put him to work, but now the guy is just getting in the way. Meanwhile, back at the construction site, Raven is standing alone and feeling sudden chill, as if someone is glaring at him from the shadows nearby. Haley is pumped and asks Baron if he is ready to get to work. Our boy is all in, shouting a confident yeah as they prepare for the day ahead. The first step is always the hardest, and she plants her boot firmly onto the dry, dusty ground of their new home to mark the spot. She grabs a sturdy rake, ready to show this land who is boss. It is finally time to turn this empty space into a thriving garden. Safety first, everyone. She adjusts her wide straw hat to keep the scorching sun from ruining her skin while she works out in the heat. With her tools in hand and a checklist ready, she is beaming with optimism. She even has a cute little chibai Baron to cheer her on as they start their gardening mission. Her mind drifts to all the delicious food they are going to grow. She wonders if they can really produce every kind of crop they need right here. She is already imagining bundles of fresh, vibrant greens sprouting from the soil. It is a beautiful dream for a couple of newcomers just starting out. Tomatoes, cabbages, and hardy vegetables dance in her head. She can almost taste the home-cooked meals they will have once the harvest finally comes in later this season. Reality check time. Haley and Baron stand in the middle of a massive, empty field that looks like it has not seen a single plant in years. Looking at the sheer size of the plot, the gardening checklist starts to feel a lot more daunting. Step 1 was choosing a spot, but this whole place is a wasteland. Haley is not one to back down, though. She winds up and swings her rake with everything she has, determined to break some ground and get started. Instead of hitting soft dirt, the rake strikes something solid with a bone-jarring clang. Sparks practically fly as she hits a hidden obstacle buried deep in the earth. The poor girl is left frozen in a silent scream while Baron watches in confusion. He asks if his big sister is okay, but her hands are probably still vibrating from the impact. She reaches down and pulls a massive, jagged rock out of the earth. This is not exactly the rich, loamy soil she was hoping for when she planned her garden. It turns out the entire field is a literal minefield of stones. No wonder this land was left abandoned and unused for so long by everyone else in the area. But hey, she has got that main character energy. She grips her rake again, telling herself she can totally handle clearing out a few rocks to make it work. Cut to a few minutes later, and she is already a sweating mess. The physical labor is hitting her way harder than she expected it would after only a few swings. Every single time she tries to plow, it is just more rocks. The sound of metal hitting stone is starting to become the annoying soundtrack of her nightmare. She is absolutely spent, panting for air with a face as red as a beet. This gardening gig is turning out to be an Olympic-level workout she did not sign up for. The checklist is looking pretty sad right now. It is basically a direct representation of her failing hopes as she stares at the messy field and the blank paper. Haley starts hallucinating about the modern world and its glorious technology. She misses tractors and even her old neighbor Mr. Kim, who used to do the heavy lifting for them. Our boy Baron is just sitting there watching her suffer. He finally asks the million-dollar question, wondering when exactly this torture is going to be over for them both. He looks out over the vast, untouched land and realizes the scale of the disaster. He cannot believe she is trying to do this entire field by herself with no help. Baron looks up at her with those big, soulful eyes. He is just a kid, but even he can see his sister is at her absolute breaking point after all that digging. Then he gives her confident thumbs up. It is supposed to be encouraging, but it does not exactly help her with the back-breaking labor she has left to do. Haley just stares at him, completely speechless. She is too tired to even process whatever he is trying to communicate to her right now with his positive attitude. Baron looks away, his expression becoming surprisingly serious for someone his age. It is like his little brain is working overtime on a solution to their rocky problem. The silence stretches between them as the sun beats down on the empty beach nearby. The atmosphere has definitely shifted from excitement to pure exhaustion, a subtle focus on his movements, like he is preparing to do something. Is our boy about to step up and help his sister out with the field? He turns away from her and gazes out at the rocky terrain. He might be small, but he is clearly thinking about the heavy task ahead of them. Baron stands tall with a determined look on his face. Something tells me he is not just going to sit back and watch his sister collapse in the dirt anymore. Later that night, Haley is a total wreck. She collapses onto her bed, groaning that her entire body feels like it has been hit by a truck after all that work. She realizes just how much she overestimated this weak and starving body after trying to plow that massive field alone. Every muscle is screaming in pain as she sinks into the mattress with zero energy left to even move. She barely has the strength to speak, telling Baron she is going to sleep early. She points out some bread on the table for him before she completely passes out. She lies there staring into space, her eyes glazed over with exhaustion. The dream of a beautiful garden feels like a distant memory after the beating she took today. Our girl is lost in a sea of blonde curls, as the world around her fades into a blurry haze of confusion. Our protagonist is trapped in a haze of uncertainty. She wonders to herself if she will really be fine, but the darkness surrounding her thoughts tells a different story. Suddenly, the darkness is replaced by a roaring heat. Flames begin to lick at the edges of her consciousness as a fire starts to consume everything in sight. Our girl is lying there, sweating and struggling to find her breath. She groans in pain, begging for some kind of relief as she realizes just how hot it is getting. The smoke is becoming unbearable now. She thinks to herself that the air is getting way too thick, making every single breath a desperate struggle for survival. An urgent voice pierces through the haze of her mind. Someone is screaming for her to wake up before it is too late, and the fire claims her for good. Her eyes snap open in a flash of brilliant blue. The fog of sleep is gone, replaced by a sudden jolt of adrenaline as she realizes the danger is very real. She wakes up to a terrifying scene as the pillars of a grand palace hall crumble under the intense heat. Everything is engulfed in flames, and it looks like the entire ceiling is about to come crashing down on her. The confusion only grows when she realizes she is wearing a regal gown instead of her usual work clothes. She has no idea where she is, or why she is suddenly trapped in a burning building. Chaos has erupted as fire tears through the palace halls. A young girl sits in the middle of a burning room, coughing as the thick smoke begins to fill her lungs. Our girl looks up with absolute terror in her eyes. She is completely disoriented and has no idea how her world ended up in such a violent nightmare. Suddenly, the heavy sound of a metal boot hits the floor. Someone is approaching her through the thick haze of the flames and falling ash. The knight grabs her arm with desperate urgency and warns her that they have to leave before the flames consume them both. Panic erupts as the walls begin to buckle and smoke fills the air. A desperate voice cries out for everyone to evacuate immediately before the entire building comes crashing down on their heads. They sprint through the crumbling hallways, while heavy pieces of the ceiling crash down and block the path behind them. The sound of their frantic footsteps echoes against the cold stone. Every second feels like an eternity when death is chasing them through the smoke. The knight explains the situation is even worse than she thought. He tells her the enemy is already inside the walls, and they are actively searching for any survivors to finish the job. He stops for a split second to give her a direct order. She has to head for the forest outside the castle walls if she wants to stay alive through the night. The urgency in his voice is terrifying as he pushes her forward. He keeps telling her to hurry because their only window of escape is closing faster than they can run. She stares at him with wide, watery eyes. The reality of her life being destroyed in a single night is finally starting to sink in as she trembles. Her gaze catches a glimpse of a shining golden emblem on his armor. It is a beautiful symbol of a sun surrounded by wings and intricate, royal designs. She thinks to herself that this emblem looks familiar. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knows she has seen this symbol many times before. Behind them, the once beautiful castle is nothing but a towering inferno under a blood-red moon. The trees in the foreground stand as dark silhouettes against the orange glow of total destruction. The shouting of the enemy soldiers reaches the forest edge. They are barking orders to make sure not a single person escapes the palace massacre alive. Our girl and the knight continue their desperate flight through the dark woods. Her light slippers are barely holding up against the rough terrain as they push deeper into the trees. The pursuers are getting dangerously close to their position. One of the soldiers yells out that the targets couldn't have gone far and they need to keep pushing. Torches flicker between the trees as the enemy squad spreads out. They are determined to search every single inch of the area until they find her and end it. She is completely out of breath and her heart is hammering in her chest. Her lungs are burning and her dress is snagging on the brush, but she knows stopping means death. The knight suddenly halts his pace and turns toward her. He tells her to stop and listen very carefully to what he is about to say next. He delivers the news that absolutely breaks her heart. From this point on, she has to continue the journey through the dark forest all by herself. The knight turns his back to her and looks toward the approaching fire. He is preparing to face the oncoming storm alone, so she has a chance to get away. His final command is simple, but carries the weight of the world. He tells her she must survive no matter what kind of hardship she has to face. He reminds her that she is the sole heir to the Meriden throne, and the weight of their entire kingdom now rests on her shoulders. Her world comes crashing down as he confirms that she is the only person left alive to carry the royal bloodline forward. The orange glow of the burning castle is visible through the thick canopy of the woods. Everything she ever knew and loved is being turned into smoke. Embers drift through the air like fireflies of doom. The forest is beautiful and terrifying at the same time as the fire draws closer. The knight stands his ground with his sword drawn and ready. He is a lone sentinel against the encroaching darkness, ready to give his life for his princess. She takes one last look back at the only person who stayed to protect her. The knight is just a silhouette against the roaring fire now. Tears stream down her face as she forces herself to keep moving. The guilt and fear are overwhelming, but she knows she has a duty to stay alive. She continues to run into the dark forest until the orange glow of her home disappears, and the silence of the night takes over. The knight is consumed by the flames as he makes his final stand. He begs her to keep going and never look back with his very last breath. Her eyes snap open in the darkness of a quiet room. The blue of her irises is vibrant and full of lingering shock from the vivid vision. She sits up in bed, gasping for air and drenched in cold sweat. It was just a dream, but it felt so real she can still feel the heat. Our boy leans in with a worried expression on his face. He is a child with short black hair and purple eyes, and he looks like he wants to know if she is okay. Our boy reaches out with a cloth to help his sister who just woke up from that nightmare. She is still shaken, eyes wide as she tries to process what just happened in that terrifying vision. He tells her to wipe herself off because she is covered in a cold sweat. It is honestly so sweet how much he cares about her even though he is just a kid himself. Our protagonist puffs out his chest with a big smile, feeling pretty proud of himself for helping. He asks if she is feeling any better now that she is fully awake. What a little gentleman. These two are just the cutest as he starts patting her on the back to soothe her. Even in chibi form, you can tell he is taking his job as a brother very seriously. Despite the comfort, our girl cannot stop thinking about that strange vision she just had. What was that dream even about, and why did it feel so incredibly real? Something is definitely off. The sister calls out to Baron as they explore a massive library that holds thousands of ancient stories and hidden secrets. Walking through the aisles, our girl asks our boy if there is anything specific he wants to find today. She is carrying a bag, ready to pick up whatever catches his eye in this giant store. Our protagonist looks around with focused eyes, scanning the rows of books for something that stands out. He is not just looking for any random story, he has a specific goal in mind for his research. The two of them start digging through a pile of books on one of the tables together. It is a slow process, but they are determined to find the perfect read before they head back home. Suddenly, our boy spots something and reaches out to grab a dark, heavy-looking volume. He pulls it from the stack with a look of pure curiosity on his face. This might be it. His sister smiles warmly as she holds up a book of her own, clearly happy to be spending this time together. She loves seeing him so engaged with learning and exploring the world. While she starts browsing the higher shelves, our boy wanders off a bit to keep searching on his own. He is small, so he is mostly sticking to the stuff he can actually reach easily. She decides to pick up a book for herself, while her brother starts scaling the shelves to reach the most interesting volumes. His eyes go wide as he finally finds exactly what he was looking for tucked away. This is the moment where his childhood curiosity really kicks in, and he discovers something incredibly interesting. The boy suddenly freezes as he processes the title and realizes this book is definitely not a normal bedtime story for children. Our boy turns back to his sister and asks if she can buy this one specific book for him. He has this look in his eyes that she just cannot say no to. She is floored by the massive size of the tome and realizes the golden magic circle on the cover makes it look incredibly heavy. She is completely stunned to find the pages filled with foreign text and complex diagrams that seem way too advanced for a child. She's thinking to herself that maybe noble kids these days are just built different if they learn foreign languages as a basic. It seems way too advanced for someone his age, but she is impressed. Our boy just stares at her with those big purple eyes, waiting for her final answer on the purchase. He is not backing down because he knows there is something important inside those pages. The boy crosses his arms and refuses to leave without the book, while his sister nervously wonders if she should be encouraging this intense study. Eventually, she gives in and calls for the shopkeeper to ring everything up for them. If he really wants to read a giant foreign encyclopedia, she might as well support him. Retail therapy, everyone. The duo heads out into the sunny streets, with the boy lugging that massive book like a tiny scholar on a serious mission. She tries to justify it by thinking that kids often have weird dreams, like wanting to grow up to be dinosaurs. To her, this is probably just another one of those phases where he wants to be different. She watches him closely and finds it hilarious that a little kid is treating a monster manual like the most important thing in the world. Our boy points a finger in the air and starts explaining something with a huge, joyful grin. He is clearly excited to dive into the contents of his new favorite possession and share the knowledge. He asks his sister if she happens to have something against frogs, since the book seems to feature them. He is being so enthusiastic about it that his eyes are literally sparkling with joy. She finds frogs adorable and is just relieved that her brother is interested in something normal for a change. Our protagonist lets out a happy ribbit sound as they walk, fully getting into character. He is having the time of his life, but his fun is about to be interrupted by a familiar face. A tall man with glasses and long dark hair walks up and calls out to our boy, calling him Lord Baron. Our boy freezes instantly, looking like he just got caught doing something embarrassing. Busted. Raven has a smug little smirk on his face after hearing that ribbit, and our poor boy is blushing hard enough to explode. Raven remains professional while greeting the sister, but Baron is in the background fuming like a grumpy ball of static. His sister holds up the massive book and asks Raven if he knows anything about this frog-themed volume. She is curious if a scholar like him would recognize such a strange and heavy text. Raven takes a serious interest in the book and immediately recognizes the advanced content as he flips through the pages. This book is actually a monster ecology lecture written by Raven himself, and he seems quite proud to explain it to them. Haley is just standing there when she hears something that completely throws her off. The glasses-wearing dude mentions something about Lord Baron, and she is left looking like she just saw a ghost. This frozen wasteland is a total nightmare where gates vomit out monsters non-stop, and nobody would ever visit it by choice. The hammer finally drops when she learns that a mandatory service period is actually required for everyone living in this kingdom. She loses her mind after realizing the northern gate involves forced conscription, while her brother and Raven just watch her spiral. Her brain is short-circuiting, because the original novel never mentioned anything about mandatory military service or conscription being a thing. The weight of this new information is just crushing her. Everything she thought she knew about this world, and the plot is being flipped upside down right now. Our boy looks up from his book and asks if his sister is okay. He is completely clueless about the mental breakdown she is having while she realizes what this enlistment means for their Baron. She starts imagining the absolute worst-case scenario. A victory flag waving over those frozen mountains might sound heroic to some people, but to her, it just looks like a recipe for disaster. She pictures him in full military gear being sent off to the frozen north and starts crying over this imagined tragedy. The final realization hits her like a truck. She simply cannot believe that he actually has to enlist and go fight in that monster-infested hellscape. Haley struggles to keep her composure as she faces the grim reality of her brother being sent away to the front lines. Haley struggles to keep her composure as she faces the grim reality of her brother being sent away to the front lines. The boy's innocent declaration of courage only makes the situation more heart-wrenching for Haley. Haley can't stop thinking about the horrors of the battlefield. It is a nightmare scenario for any guardian to see a small child sent off to war. This new gentleman with the glasses enters the picture and notices the heavy atmosphere. He seems curious about the dynamic between Haley and our boy. This stylish guy with the long dark hair and glasses turns to the blonde girl with a polite smile. He has a very specific question on his mind that he has been waiting for the right moment to ask her. She remains distracted by the news of the draft, even as the conversation shifts toward more mundane, neighborly matters. The new neighbor mentions his progress with the move, suggesting a celebration once he is settled in his new home. Trying to keep things friendly, Haley offers to handle lunch for the big move. She puts on her best smile to hide the worry she felt earlier. The gentleman is clearly impressed by her hospitality. Meanwhile, our boy is standing there looking like he is ready to take on the world. They stand together in the town square, looking like a perfectly normal group of friends. But beneath the surface, the threat of the draft still looms large. Our blonde girl gets super pumped up and decides it is finally time to show off her legendary cooking skills. She is ready to head into the kitchen and whip up something absolutely delicious for everyone to enjoy. As night falls, she prepares a special environment to lure in a magical companion from the world outside her window. A mysterious light drifts in through the open window, capturing Haley's attention as it illuminates the room. Our boy is tucked into bed while Haley marvels at the glowing insect. She finds it incredible that something so wild can be tamed just by giving it a name. It finally sinks in that these impossible things are normal here. That is the perk of living inside the world of a fantasy novel. Our boy isn't interested in magic bugs right now because he wants his bedtime story. He holds up the book they bought earlier, looking forward to the tale. Haley gives him a sweet smile and tells him to wait just 1 second. She is getting ready to dive into the story he loves so much. They snuggle up together as she opens the heavy volume. It is a quiet moment of peace before the storm of the draft eventually arrives. The pages are filled with dense text that holds the history of this world. Every word carries the weight of a legend that is about to be told. She starts reading the opening lines that every child in this world knows by heart. It is the beginning of a story that feels uncomfortably close to their reality. We learn about a legendary hero who was born with the incredible power of a god. This wasn't just a normal warrior. This was a divine force. This hero had the ability to command legions of spirits, ghosts, and demons at his beck and call. But every bit of that power came with a soul-crushing price tag that he could not ignore. The more he utilized his divine gifts to save others, the more his physical form began to fade away from existence until he was barely a whisper in the wind. As the story progresses, it reveals the tragic consequence of the hero's strength. He gradually fades from the perception of those he protects. Even as he started to vanish into nothingness, the hero refused to stop. He just kept pushing forward despite the personal cost. He stood alone against massive shadows and terrifying monsters that threatened the peace. He was the only thing standing between humanity and total destruction. The little hero swung his sword with everything he had left. Even as a fading shadow, his resolve remained as sharp as his blade. She continues reading about the endless battles that took place in the shadows. The hero fought alone, driven by a sense of duty that superseded his own life. The illustration shows a boy who looks strikingly similar to our protagonist. He looks exhausted and cold, but he is not backing down from his duty. The sacrifice of the lonely warrior eventually pays off and brings back the light to a once darkened and dangerous land. The tale concludes with the world restored to peace, a bright and happy contrast to the hero's lonely journey. Haley slowly closes the book, her fingers lingering on the cover. The parallels between the story and their own lives are starting to feel a bit too heavy. She lets out a heavy sigh as she finishes the final chapter of the intense legend for the little child lying in bed. The boy listens in silence, his small hands gripping the sheets as the weight of the story settles over the room. Haley hopes that she can protect him from ever having to make a choice like that. She wants to believe there is a way for him to be a hero without fading away. Even after the story is over, her hands linger on the cover as she thinks about the heavy burden the hero had to carry. She wants to make sure this kid never has to face such a lonely and difficult fate in his own life. She looks over at Baron and asks if a hero can really win against an army of spirits and demons. Our boy just stares off into the distance, his mind clearly somewhere else as she continues the tale. Silence fills the room as she gazes at him, wondering how much of this heavy story he actually understands. Her thoughts turn dark, thinking about how the world always demands a single sacrifice to save the majority. Baron looks up at her with those deep purple eyes, his expression far too mature for a kid his age. She looks down at him with such a gentle and kind smile that even his cold heart starts to waver just a little bit. He leans his head against her, finally closing his eyes as he prepares to drift off to sleep. She pulls him into a tight embrace, wishing she could protect him from the cruel fate the world has planned. She dreams of a simple world where children can just be happy and hold hands without any worries. Deep down, she hopes that life can eventually turn into a fairy tale with beautiful and kind ending. Haley realizes that the little guy has finally fallen asleep, his breathing soft and steady against her arm. Haley whispers a final goodnight to her brother as the quiet night settles over their small and peaceful wooden cabin. As soon as the coast is clear, Baron slips out of bed and quietly sneaks out into the night air while his sister sleeps. He walks along the wooden fence, looking out at the barren land and thinking about how messy everything still looks. Out of nowhere, a cute rock spirit with glowing eyes and a tiny sprout on its head pops up. Baron points at the ground and gives the little creature strict instructions to fix everything and hide their tracks. The rock spirit salutes him and starts moving the earth, working hard to restore the ground to its original state. It scurries around the field, piling up stones and smoothing out the dirt with incredible speed and precision. The spirit levels the field in seconds and makes sure not a single trace of their presence remains for anyone to find. The little rock guy makes some flowers bloom to celebrate a job well done, and Baron softly calls out to his sister. He stands there in the middle of the field, looking like a lonely shadow against the vast and empty landscape. Our boy repeats the words fairy tale to himself, his voice dripping with a bitterness that no child should have. He envisions the ruthless regent, Anna, hiding her massive ambitions behind a fan, while her dark shadow looms over the entire empire. He realizes the regent wants him to spend his entire life as a tool fighting monsters at the dangerous northern gate. Baron sees right through her transparent intentions and knows she just wants him to be a sacrificial lamb for her own goals. It is definitely a happy ending for every other person in the empire, just not for the one being sacrificed. The masses would cheer and celebrate a happy ending that is built entirely on the suffering and sacrifice of one single person. The darkness seems to press in on him, making the world feel small and suffocating despite the open space. He admits to himself that while the rest of the world gets their happy ending, he is the only one left in the dark. Looking at his quiet surroundings, he accepts the grim reality that his life is destined to be a lonely and cold tragedy. His final thought is a crushing one, as he realizes the only place he belongs is in that cold and lonely place. He imagines himself being forgotten and abandoned in the freezing snow, where nobody can ever find or help him again. The thought of being left behind forever makes his heart feel heavy and cold, as he stares into the dark and empty void. He used to believe that the only place a monster like him truly belonged was in a dark and lonely corner far away from everyone. Haley's words about the hero being lonely start to ring in his ears and challenge his dark view of his own destiny. She completely shatters his expectations by pulling him close and telling him that he doesn't have to suffer through a lonely ending. His heart begins to race at a speed he has never felt before as her warmth finally starts to reach his frozen soul. Standing alone under the night sky, he realizes that the freezing cold of his future might finally be coming to an end. Baron is completely flustered as he tries to understand why his heart is suddenly pounding so loudly against his ribs like this. He clutches his vest tightly while trying to process the strange and wonderful sensation blooming inside his chest for the first time. He looks up at the vast sea of stars and wonders if maybe he is actually becoming a different person because of her. The young boy finally admits to himself that he is desperate to hold on to this warmth and never let it go again.